The knuckles cracking. I don't have any. I'm getting no cracks right now, so we're already off to an awful start. All right. Ahem. Hi, everyone. Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. Hope you're doing well. Today, we are doing our first live interview in a minute on the YouTube page, on the Twitch page. I appreciate you guys coming through, and I especially appreciate the time given to us by singer, songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, and producer, Mr. James Blake. How you doing, man?
Great. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, no, it's like riding a bike. I appreciate you coming through. That intro wasn't too bad. Your newest album, your sixth LP, I believe,
Yes.
Playing Robots into Heaven, is out now. We're going to talk about that and anything else that comes up in the conversation. How have you been since the last time we had a chat?
How have I been? Well, I've moved house several times, well, a couple of times.
Wow.
I've found somewhere I really like now. Set up a new studio. Played a lot of Rocket League. Been What have I been doing? Did some touring.
Okay.
That was cool.
And
So
you
I
have
guess
more.
touring
You have more tour dates
under
coming up too.
the list of priorities apparently. Yeah, well, I did the Steve Lacy, Fouché, Tori et Moi tour. That was the Reset tour. We did that, and now we're about to go away again to Milan and then around Europe, and then we're going to come to America
Okay. Cool.
for a headline show.
Sick. I mean, I hope to make it out to one of those shows. You guys are going to be on the East Coast, right?
We are.
Okay. Cool. All right. Looking forward
Yeah.
to it. All right.
Please come
So, I mean, I know that you're far from the most obsessed guy out there when it comes to like what people are saying about you and your music. But from what you've caught of the reception so far of the new record, like, what have been your takeaways and reactions to that as of right now, with it still being fresh?
It's been, it's been good. No, you know what? It's been great. I mean, because I think maybe there's some relief from people who were just happy to hear me make this kind of stuff. The size of relief is surprisingly encouraging compared to, just whatever it is you're expecting on release day. I mean, it's hard to know, really. And also, I think as I progress, I try and expect less and less. That rhymed. I try and expect less and less from the situation. Now I tend to turn the internet off that day and kind of go for a walk and try and have a different type of day. Just because it feels a bit like when I release music, kind of feels like a funeral for the music in a way, more than like the great day that I've been waiting for. Just because it's like it's no longer mine, really. It's sort of
I wanted to ask you, like, to get kind of a bit of a comparison or a contrast. I mean, I don't know if you remember in the last conversation that we had, you maybe in a moment of, just like feeling willing to share, like really kind of teased toward, even though we were far way out from this album, you teased toward this record pretty hard. Like, even with your last album having been just dropped and pretty fresh, because you had said at the time, like, I think this is going to be like my last album of kind of, almost like a ballad style singer-songwriter record for either now or for a minute, because I think this is maybe the best I can do it. And I think I'm going to make more of an electronic record next time around. And,
yeah.
Do you feel like you succeeded in that transition? Did you stay true to that mission, would you say?
Do you ever, I mean, you didn't pause between tran and
Sorry,
Edition, which
I apologize.
highly disappointing.
Yeah, I know.
But I did, yeah, I do think I succeeded, and I think it's interesting actually that I said it then, because I must have already been getting sick of the songwriting process. That's probably why I was saying that. And I think yeah, I mean, it's not always that, you say, oh, I'm going to do this, and then it actually happens. Because obviously then when you start compiling stuff, you're like, oh, you know what, I don't have enough strong material in this vein. And then, but I think I was just so determined to do something completely the opposite that I sort of made it happen. So yeah, I guess you got that was probably the first time I'd said that to anyone outside of, you know, um, my close friends.
Hmm. And you talk about the songwriting process. Was there something about the process of producing these tracks or doing it in the way that you did, the fashion that you did on this record, that kind of refreshed the whole process for you or made it exciting or engaging again or something?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that I was using a lot of modular stuff, modular synths and stuff, I mean, that kind of made it fun. It was just like a studio full of toys, really. And then, you know, if you're into that kind of thing, there's kind of more hobby. This album felt like a hobby more than a like, you know, uh, trials in the way that sometimes albums can feel like, you know, albums can feel you can kind of become a veteran of an album process because it takes so much out of you, and then you know this was more fucking about basically, and then finding fun sounds that ended up kind of having vocals over them, but they didn't really, you know, I wasn't sitting there going, right, I've got to make this song make sense in a, you know, more traditional sense. So yeah, because once I wrote "Say What You Will," I just thought, oh, that's done really. I've sort of done it, and you know, I realized it wasn't. I mean, I guess popular song is sort of like, you know, over the years it means completely different things. I mean, there's the Great American Songbook, obviously type stuff, and then there's, you know, Havana with Young Thug, Camila Cabello. You know what I mean? It's like there's
Right.
what you can think of when you hear pop song, but I also you know, love the kind of I love a whole, you know, the whole canon. So in terms of like the types of possibilities there are. So, but anyway, so with "So What You Will," I was just like, okay, cool, I'm done. I'm done. I'm just gonna go and do this.
Hmm. And you know, did I guess the kind of genres or vibes and beats that you're toying with on this record, did it at all feel like maybe a bit of a return to form for you personally, or maybe have you gotten that reaction from some fans who are maybe like a little more familiar to you, or maybe got first introduced to you through like a lot of your electronic stuff and the EP stuff back before you came out with your debut? Was there something about this that felt familiar to that, or did you feel like you were kind of going into a new direction, breaking new ground with this record?
I sort of think a little bit of both, because obviously, however much there might be some resurrection of like the spirit of some of those older pieces of music
Hmm.
and kind of how I approached them. I guess we're always moving forward just in time. So you sort of have to like react to what's around you. And you're, as an artist, you're always looking at what's around you. So, you know, or how you feel now. So it was never going to sound anything like any of that stuff.
Right.
But I think just there was I wanted to kind of just like show people that side of my brain again.
Hmm.
And actually show myself as well, because, you know, when we're playing live, I think there's always you know, I don't really design the albums for live. And then there's always this like education that happens afterwards when I play some of the songs. I'm like, ooh, that doesn't play very well, like in a live setting.
Hmm.
Or some songs surprise you, and they really do. But out of the moments in the live show that made me the happiest, it was always just the stuff, you know, it was either like songs like Retrograde, songs sort of crowd pleasers in those senses, but also then the crowd pleasers that came in the form of dance music and kind of more sort of heavy or aggressive stuff, and Stop What You're Doing remix and all this stuff that we play live. And when you get those reactions, it really makes you sort of connect back with that thing, and you want to make more of it.
Yeah. Have you already given any thought to how some of the dancier, almost like ravier cuts off this record are going to play in those settings? Because like, you know, as far as grooves go, a few of the tracks on this thing are like some of your hardest to date. Like, you know, you're maybe boldest going in that direction in a long time.
Yeah, I'm glad you think so. Yeah, the live thing it was important for this one. I mean, I sort of knew it would work live anyway, just because of the kind of the way they're sort of forward propelling type beats. But I definitely, I don't know. I guess, yeah, I guess dance music is something that's quite easy for me to plug into because I've just been DJing so long and understand it much more than I understand how to write songs, probably.
Really?
You know,
You
in a
feel that way?
natural way.
Okay. In a way where you
I
feel
don't think I understand.
like you don't need to think about it as
Sorry.
much? Like in that way where you don't need to.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, it's easier.
Hmm.
Maybe it's easier objectively, or maybe it's just easier for me. But I do find uh, it's you know what it is it probably plays to my strengths a little bit more. My strengths being like collage and the ability to kind of make hooky moments out of like just vocals that have been manipulated and turn them into kind of bit you know not necessarily traditional song structures, but things that flow well. And because if that's my strength, or if that's one of my strengths, then dance music actually is a perfect bed for that. It sort of always has been. I just had to figure out a way to like make my voice be at the party rather than outside the party, kind of knocking on the door, hearing it all from outside.
Yeah, I mean, I think collage is a really good way to kind of frame what you're doing here. And at some points, and let me know if maybe this felt this way for you in the process of creating it, after having and built up the discography that you have up until this point, there were some moments and tracks that to me felt like you're almost giving audiences like a small taste of everything that they know you for, but you're kind of like, again, smashing it all together into some kind of like, larger concept piece.
Yeah, yeah. If I'm honest, I guess with this one, I just didn't really think much outside of what I was actually doing. I probably didn't think about like what I was giving people so much. Once I decided, okay, let's flex this a little bit. I didn't, as in, let's make this kind of record and let's flex this side of the brain. I didn't really particularly pay much mind to I guess, the presentation in the way that I have in some of the other albums. I think it's probably quite clear when you listen to some of the tracks because they're not. It's not really ordered like an album. It's sort of ordered. Well, it is in a way, but it's more like a kind of like a club mixtape or something. It's like you have like it feels more like the arc of a rave. It's like you sort of come up into loading, then tell me, and then you're kind of at like maybe peak energy, and then it sort of like takes you into more of a clubby realm, and then you sort of come all the way back down by the end. So it's supposed to be like that, really. I think it's and maybe even that was an accident. But that's how I plan. That's how I actually DJ as well. So I guess that makes sense.
But, outside of like, I guess, starting to trend away from like a lot of the singer-songwriter stuff you were doing on your last album, did you give yourself any real kind of creative parameters on this record? Because there are moments that to me feel almost like, kind of boundaryless in terms of like the types of ideas that you're throwing into a given track. There are even moments where I'm kind of blown away, like on He's Been Wonderful, with some of the sample material you're just throwing in there that feels like aesthetically such a big contrast from everything else that you're doing on the record in terms of like the 1-2-3s and the gospel bits. And, I'm just sort of thinking like, is he going into this with any rhyme or reason, or is he just like kind of just going purely off of instinct and like, this sounds good, I'm just going to throw it all in here and just kind of see what chaos comes out of it?
Yeah, the latter, I think. I mean, I think a lot of it was like, does this feel transcendent in the sense that, does it feel like it's like, does it feel that way or that way, basically? I mean, it's like hard to.
Is it going up or is it going down?
Yeah, it's like, are we raised, it's like if I were to use an LA terminology, oh, is it high vibration,
Mm.
basically? Is it and it's funny because there's, I guess vibration is like a, can sometimes just seem like a woo woo new agey kind of term, but I think on a real sort of level we're talking about literal vibration. And when we, for example, like when we hear sub bass, like intense sub bass, evokes in our sort of primal kind of how we receive it is that it reminds us of like a stampede. So it arouses anxiety at the same time as excitement, which is sort of two sides of the same coin. Um, and so you bring in like heavy sub bass, and that's kind of the feeling it evokes, right? But at the same time, if you then juxtapose that with something beautiful, then that can be, you know, a that can be a shade, right, of something. But when you sort of experiment with the frequency range, you can actually experiment with how it feels. And this record is not very subby. It's not very kind of sub bass driven.
Mm.
And I think that's a lot to do with how I wanted it to make you feel. I wanted it to make you feel uplifted. Uh, and so that involves chordally and frequency range wise, that involves kind of like designing it a certain way. And I don't know, I wouldn't describe it necessarily as like, it's probably one of my more fun records, even though, like that's probably more, I don't know, it's less for me to say, but I feel like it's not so much fun as like higher vibration, maybe
Hmm.
in the in the in the execution.
I mean, it's definitely one of your more visceral records. At least, that's kind of the sense that I've gotten off of it. But I do actually want to kind of draw a little bit of attention toward the spot of the album you were alluding to earlier, the kind of the coast down, because I think some pretty significant tracks crop up there that I'd like to get some kind of like specific comments from you on. For one, we have the closing track, the title track, which is this beautiful multi-phased ambient piece. Obviously the album gets its namesake from this track. Like, how do you feel like this kind of song represents the experience of the album itself, and like, kind of what went into it technically to kind of, conjure the sounds that you did? Was it a lot of that analog synth stuff that you were talking about earlier?
Yeah, it was all one. It was sort of a modular synth about this big, and I posted it about 3 years ago on Instagram, or maybe 2 years ago. And I posted a video of it playing itself. It's basically, I'd set this thing up to be generative, which basically means, to anyone who doesn't do this, which is 99.9% of people, as in modular synth,
Right.
you can kind of set the parameters so that, for example, like it plays all within the scale of C. So it's just all going to be euphonic sounding stuff, right? You can also set certain notes to not play. And then you can set how often, like how, like the tempo, you can set the way it sounds, the what waves you're dealing with, right? Sine, square, triangle, whatever. So it's like, it's 4 separate oscillators kind of with their own rules. And as such, that kind of, in a way, that kind of is a bit like a Bach chorale, or like some kind of fugal classical thing where each thing is just like playing at random within a scale.
Hmm.
And sorry, that's 3 of them. And then one of them has a specific melody, which is that do, 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 do. And so it's just kind of, you just leave it going and it just plays itself basically for like, and I guess the skill in it wasn't, it wasn't composed. The skill was in, just doing that, figuring out
setting the parameters and assembling it and just kind of allowing it to do what it's going to do.
Yeah. And then putting some reverb on it. So,
and then, of course, the verb after. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it ended up sounding like, the way it sounded to me was like a church organ, and it had this kind of it wasn't funereal. It was sort of more uplifting than that. But it had that vibe, and when I was listening to it, I just for some reason I had I was thinking of, because it's obviously a modular synth, and because it gave me that church organ feel. I just kept thinking of that phrase. It sounded like, and it represented the organist that was playing Robots into Heaven. And I liked the kind of tongue-in-cheek nature of that, and the fact that, you know, there's basically this machine that's animated itself, that I'm the one having the spiritual experience listening to this music that this fucking thing's made. And in a way, it was this kind of, the idea was, well, let's return the favor. And so that's where the name came from. And I posted that on Instagram. You know, people were like, "Oh, well done," whatever. And then onwards, put out the record, "Friends Break Your Heart," and then didn't really think about it for like a year and a half. And then I had like a folder of all these other modular jams. There were so many. There was like 200 of them, of different times that I'd done basically that, but in different ways. Some on tour, some in hotel rooms, some at home. And I just started arranging them and kind of getting, and it all just, once a lot of it was done just for fun. So then pretty near the end, I was like, oh, maybe I've got an album here. And instead of putting all this other music out, which by the way is the next stuff, I'm going to put this out. Because this feels like this needs to come out now. Like Friends That Break Your Heart was such a detour in the kind of like trying to write songs category. But I was like, right, this is the perfect time. I can't wait any longer to put this kind of stuff out.
Right. So the goal would be to just basically keep digging into this until you're sick of this, and then you'll do a different secret third thing.
Well, it's all a game. It's like, you know,
right.
Try and win the singer-songwriter game, and then try and win, not in a commercial sense, not in a way of like beating other people, but just you know, oh, I can do that, cool, okay, now I'm going to go and try and do this.
You know, I don't know, man. I think you have the potential to run the modular scene. You know, you just have to have faith in yourself. You know.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a small gap fight I mean, we could probably pack everyone who uses modular synths into like a swimming pool. Right.
It's a big fish, small pond situation. I mean, you already brought the water into it. We're pretty much there.
I'm a small fish in that pond, though. In the modular pond, I'm a small fish. You know, like, I'm still learning. But yeah, I definitely. Oh, so to get back to what you were saying, you know, was there any? Oh, you know what? I've completely fucking forgotten the question.
No, listen. You've gone plenty into it. You've gone plenty into it.
Okay, great. I over-explain, and you know that about me. So.
That's why you're a great interview, sir. So anyway, I also wanted to ask you because again, I think this is an interesting placement on a record that again is so ravey and doesn't necessarily kind of, for the most part, dig into a lot of those super personal, poetic, I'm literally going to explain my feelings here in words, like on, you know, your previous record. You know, there's not a lot of songs here that do that, but on If You Can Hear Me, like, you know, you're pretty much dropping this, you know, abstract motif that pretty much ends up being like a, you know, an open letter to your father. You know, what basically inspired that at this point, and what made you feel like this was kind of the place to put that?
Well, when that song went out when we sent it to the label and whatever, the track name actually at the end of it in brackets it was If You Can Hear Me in brackets Ad Astra, because I actually wrote I wrote it to a scene in Ad Astra. There was an idea that I was originally going to do the music for that movie. And in the end, they went with someone more like conventionally like classical and stuff. And it sounds great. But that was a scene I wrote to, right? So I ended up taking what I'd done to that and then writing this over it. But what I originally did to it was just piano, which was just the piano loop that you hear that Dom Maker created out of something I played. But the scene in Ad Astra was a scene where, I don't know if you've seen the movie, but his father's been out, not lost in space, but he's in a far corner of space, and he's been there for years and years and years. And he goes to, in order to communicate with his dad, he has to go to some ridiculously far away space station and, you know, go via satellite, and it's grainy and all that shit. Sometimes I'm very jealous of his dad. Love it if people can reach me. Anyway, so he finally gets through to him, and it's the scene where he finally speaks to his dad for, you know, the first time in years, since he was a child, maybe, I think. But I thought the metaphor was beautiful in terms of, you know, if your dad has done something, has dedicated their life to something, and you are dedicating your life to that same thing, or even something else, but you feel that kind of father-son decision to follow this thing right to this, you know, whatever conclusion, and the sacrifices you make in the relationships around you, and the kind of, and even your own relationship with your dad and with your son, you know, it's like there are just things that only we could relate to each other about. And I think the film takes an empathetic approach to it, and I'm trying to take an empathetic approach in the song as well, and I think that's why I felt comfortable sending it to him and seeing what he thought, and he loved it, and so but it's, you know, it's not critical, it's not like, it's just this is how it is, you know, this is what happened, and these are the mistakes I've made, and whatever, and yeah, but yeah.
No, I mean, I appreciate you kind of, you know, shedding some light on the background of that. I mean, obviously, you know, I haven't seen that movie, nor did I know that, like, you potentially had like a connection there to it. And as I was listening to the song, I was like, damn, this guy's going through like, you know, it's like, oh man, he's putting his whole situation with his dad out there. Like, yeah, I feel bad. It's like, I can't, you know, it's like, I can't just ignore this. You know what I mean? It seems like, it seems like a pretty big topic on the record or something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, it's just, I just liked the way it felt, and I like the way the chords are. I like the theme of it, and I like the way the chords are like ascending all the time. It's just this ascending pattern the whole time, which kind of felt like it fit in with the kind of ascension theme, or the Playing Rebels in Heaven theme. And there's something about just what was I going to say? I mean, you know, it is personal. It is the way I've gone into it. It is personal, but it's just, you know, with songwriting, you sort of have to. I think you're trying to say something a little bit like therapy. You're trying to say it in the way you feel, rather than what somebody else has done, or what the, you know, it's like you're trying to be objective about your side of the street, basically. If you say things in a way that is kind of you can easily rewrite history with songwriting,
right?
And the people in your life can hear your songs and be like, wait, hold on, that's not how it happened. So you know, I try to be as kind of hands off or objective as I can be. But yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, I think that brings up again another potentially interesting topic here. And hey, this song could be, you know, impersonal as well. But the other track that I wanted to specifically dig into, as far as like its subject matter, was Fire the Editor. Yeah. Like I need to know, did someone piss you off? Did someone piss you off and make you write this song?
It's the editor of Pitbull, and I've been wanting to say no. No, it's the editor is yourself. The editor is your inner critic, your inner voice that stifles your expression and stops you and edits you before you even speak. It's especially in this era where we're we're in a time where I think a lot of people are heavily, I mean, social media is heavily edited, and the way we talk to each other is heavily edited, and a lot of people don't feel safe to be their full selves online because it isn't safe, basically.
Hmm.
And I think this kind of touches on that, and it touches on how we stay, yeah, how we get rid of that voice, basically.
Hmm. Well, I mean, it kind of seems like you had to engage in that process in some way in order to kind of like free yourself to do pretty much anything on this record.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's kind of why the song fit, really.
Hmm.
But yeah, I like that one. It's a nice tempo switch as well. It's probably one of the only half-timey tracks. But yeah, I like it.
To ask you a little bit about a sort of an extracurricular thing. Obviously, you recently had some placement stuff on the recent Travis Scott record.
Yes.
Could you go into that a little bit and just kind of like go into
Sure.
how you were tapped on the shoulder for that, and how your involvement in the track and kind of the creative process on your end when kind of taking part in one of the biggest records of the year.
Yeah, I mean, it was an honor. The track that Till Further Notice was something that I started with Metro,
Mm.
like around the time of the like Mile High and stuff. But we didn't kind of finish it off, and we finished it off later. And then Metro. One day I just went into the studio at Metro, and he was like, "Oh, by the way, here's the new Till Further Notice," and it had Travis and 21 on it, and I was just like, "What the fuck?" It was insane. I mean, it sounded amazing, but I didn't, I just didn't know that was going to happen. And then later on, we were talking about where to put it, and then it just sat there for a while. And then it became Travis's, basically, because we just, I mean, he was like, "I want it for the record," and it's like, great.
Yeah. So you originally took part in it with Metro, just or not even knowing where it might end up landing or whatever.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. 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 And then once Travis vocaled it, it became quite clear that it was, it was pretty much a Travis song. Um, it was just that once, especially that second verse, I think that he does. That's when I was like, "Oh yeah, this is you."
Mm-hmm. Do you? I mean, is there a lot of material like that for you, like floating out there that could, I don't know, at one point become activated and just like end up on somebody's record or something?
Yeah, they're like sleeping. I don't want to say giants because that's self-aggrandizing, but they're sort of like, yeah, like plagues under the ice.
Okay, you don't have to go all the way to plague. Like well, sleeping giant's a little much. Let's call it let's call it a disease.
That was the most English version of it.
Right.
So yeah, they're just sleep. Yeah, they're yeah, they could be activated. I mean, honestly, the amount of music that I've made that I don't even know what's going to happen to. I mean, tracks just come out sometimes, and someone says, "Not this hasn't happened with Metro and Travis, but sometimes tracks come out and someone goes, 'Oh, by the way, you're on this.'"
Oh.
It's like, God, okay, and then I go and listen to it, and it's awful, and I've had to take my name off several things because of the nature of the industry. It's like people you do something with someone, and then you don't hear back for like a year because they've got ADHD, and then they'll just run it through like 10 different producers, and then you just hear the end result, and you're like, this is horrendous. This is nothing like what we did, and then it just has to something you have to make a decision, and it's like that's not how I like to collaborate at all. And like the longer time's gone on, the more I've kind of gone, no, hold on, let's let's actually work together on this. That would be collaborating.
Right.
Luckily, with everything Travis and Metro related, not only have they not done that, they've always been very respectful about it and like involved me, but they've also, I just try, even if they did, I trust them. They're just so good at what they do.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, you know, you've been in the music industry for so long at this point, and while when you did break through, like we were very much in the digital era already, you know, but as the years have drawn on, have you you know, seen any kind of like shift in terms of like what is usually expected in terms of like parameters or, you know, rules of thumb around collaborating and making music together? Do you often find that like that impersonal way of like feeding it through a dozen different people is what is happening more often than maybe it was in the past, or maybe it's just kind of favored because it's easier?
Depends what sort of area of the industry I've moved into, basically. I mean, I think I hadn't been exposed to kind of, and it could be that pop is like this in England as well. But when I went to America, I was surprised by how many people were involved in records, how many stages things went through, and you know, like it's done to such a high standard, I guess. In some cases, that I guess maybe it's the only way it could be made. I don't really know, but I do also think that the way people collaborate nowadays, and this includes me in the past, it's a hard environment to make something organic because, you know, you're sort of not, you know, if you think about like the way people made music in the 60s and 70s, you're just kind of in a room playing with other musicians, and then you're reacting to each other in real time. Now you're all just facing the same way at a screen, inputting things into the, you know, building blocks, adding things, but it's like, it's kind of the reason I think that so much stuff just sounds, I don't know, disconnected or something. It's like music. I mean, I'm not somebody who's like, oh, there's no good music anymore. Of course there is. I mean, there's loads of amazing shit, but I think the people who are making great stuff now are finding ways to keep it feeling human and like, I don't know, idiosyncratic. And that's hard to do with the methods we have of making music now, unless you are, you know, playing things in live as much as you possibly can, and you know. But yeah, it's a very, especially the you know, in terms of like the more commercial it is, the more likely the vocals are going to sound squeezed and compressed and fucked with and microwaved, you know, and the more likely it is that things have to be kind of put through millions of different processes. And it's just, I don't know, that can be a bit frustrating.
And just to kind of drill into it, you made a bit of an offhanded comment. I just want to specify, in your experience when you've been involved in sessions that may have been more industry or been witness to such things in the UK, it's usually different, or it's more kind of like less chefs kind of throwing in whatever into the recipe, or it's the same?
No, I don't know, because I haven't really done many sessions in the UK, and also kind of I haven't really worked with that many pop, kind of more, you know, more closer to pop leaning people in the UK, really.
Got it.
I actually don't know. This is kind of what I'm saying is I don't think it's a country specific thing. I just think it's the way our tools and our kind of it's the way our industry, I guess, has kind of like shaped the way people engage collaboratively. It's like, you know, and the same for streaming. You know, streaming dictates the way or shapes the way people engage collaboratively too. And what is, you know, what's worth making, basically.
Right.
Which is, yeah.
You know, obviously, again, creatively speaking, we already talked about, you didn't put a whole lot of parameters on yourself for, you know, this album, but, you know, for this record or any other song or whatever, you know, are there moments where from your experience as an artist, you do kind of like feel any kind of like pressure or expectation when it comes to stream platforms in terms of like, this will do well, this will not do well. I need to worry about not doing it like this because it may not stream the amount of streams that I want it to stream.
Right. I think I have thought about that in the past. As much as little as I wanted to, I sort of felt like I had to, and I think maybe that's just being in LA too long. But honestly, I think that bubble might have burst for me because I just don't need to, and you know, I've made so I've made enough money. Like I just there's just no consideration to that. I don't, you know what I mean?
No,
it's
that's good. You've made fuck you. I want to do what I want to do. Money. That's good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think just having, it's not even just fuck you money. It's more like security. You know, it's security and sustainability, really. I think, you know, whatever thought I had in my head of like, oh, it's going to be over by the time I'm 30, you know, blah, blah, blah. It's like, that's clearly not. But I think there is a kind of almost like a youth obsessed culture in a way. And so it kind of gives you the idea that you're not really going to be relevant after a certain time. And so I think, yeah, maybe there was that at the back of my head sometimes. Maybe, you know, you can't have a completely pure mind, and you can't be as an artist, and you don't live inside a vacuum, and and your music isn't made inside a vacuum, and you're always reacting to what people have said in some way. So, but in terms of, yeah, whether it's in terms of like appealing, I am lucky. I'm really lucky now that because I do think like needing to make money is you know, to live is corrupts all, you know, corrupts most music. So we've got to like
most everything.
You know, yeah, pretty much everything. So, you know, and we have to just be realistic about that. But then be as kind of hardcore as you can about sticking to your guns and stuff. It's just a balance, really. But yeah, I feel pretty free.
I mean, not that you're a mind reader, but obviously, you know, you've interacted with and collaborated with artists who have some pretty huge profiles. And, you know, you talk about your own process and how maybe kind of things for you personally and creatively have shifted now that you do have kind of that security that you were talking about to just kind of like, you know, be free and open creatively as you please. Like, what do you think keeps artists at that maybe more conventional grind though, because obviously, you know, there are artists who have much larger bank accounts, you know, than you. No shade, you know, I'm sure your bank account's looking nice, you know, but still, you know, like what do you think keeps some artists or producers in that mode even after they've made like their 35th million, you know?
I mean, don't fucking ask me. I would love to know that. Well, I mean, I have theories. You know, firstly, I think if you've grown up poor, you're not like the floor is lava. So
right.
You can't legislate a new mindset, you know, unless you really, even if you become rich, you sort of work on that. But if you know, you can be addicted to addicted to winning, I guess. You can be addicted to a lot of things that put you in that place where you can just keep trying to smash it out the park every time, even though, you know, it's like okay, we get it, you won, you beat everyone. But it's, you know, I guess I don't know, I'm a competitive person, but
right,
I think I'm more,
and I get that sense.
In a way of like streaming figures or money. I'm competitive. Like, I wanted to make an album that would send producers back to the studio. Like, I wanted to do something that would inspire people,
right?
And me, so that I could go out and beat not even beat, but like sort of beat the yeah, kind of like beat the last thing I did in it in a way. But
Do you think that's like partially contributed to your, you know, your bit of a reputation as a musician in a way?
in the sense that like the competition is more creatively than it
Right,
is.
right, right.
Maybe, maybe. Um, I've certainly, I guess, I just tried really hard at that. And, um, but I think the key is not really trying that hard. I think this this is what this album
Right,
kind of
you've got to have a nonchalance about it so that, you know, nobody gets you know, on edge when you're around.
Well, yeah. I just think like what I mean by that is like just it's nice to do something naturally rather than, you know, coming from some kind of unconscious like got to do this, got to do that, got to do. It's just like no, no, no. Let's just like make music for fun and enjoy ourselves. But you know, like I said, there is still it's a job, uh, but we're trying to make it less of a job, I guess.
Well, you know, with that, I appreciate you coming through and giving us some insight into the record and being an open book, man. Thank you. Thank you again.
Come out. Always. Thanks for having me.
All right. Have a good one. We're going to keep listening to the album, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you, mate.
All right.
See you again soon.
See you
at the
again
show.
soon. Yeah, hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, wherever you are can make it, I'll make sure it happens.
Okay. I'll let you know.
Nice.
All right. Have a good one.
See. All right.